Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V-Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to our game day show for Texas Week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. With us today will be one of our favorite guests, the angel of the big house, beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. Coaches always say teams show the most improvement from Game 1 to Game 2. I'm not always sure that's true, but in this case, we do need to clean up a lot of mistakes and make a big leap if we're going to challenge Texas on Saturday. This Longhorn offense will be a huge test for our defense, and the offense needs to help them out by sustaining some drives and making sure they aren't on the field all day, because this Texas offense will eventually make us pay. At his presser this week, Sharon said Texas is going to be a challenge in every phase of the game.
Yeah, we're super excited for the challenge. We know we got a really good football team coming in all three phases. Coach Sark has done a really good job with the program. You know, on offense, they present challenges because the way he calls the game and what he does, his creativity, his rhythm. Obviously, they have a really great quarterback. Skill players, fast everywhere. Running back is really good. I know they got the other two that got hurt, but the running back they have now is really good too, and the O-line is as good as you'll see in the country. So I know our defense is excited for the challenge to go against them, and offensively, their defense played very well. Sound, not very many mistakes. I think they have 4 returning starters on defense, and they have guys that have played, so super excited for Saturday.
Sharon also had good things to say about his quarterback, Davis Warren.
I mean, talk about a fighter. Had leukemia, had cancer. Senior year was canceled because of COVID. Came here as a walk-on. He's been a third-string guy since he's been here, a backup. Every week, you know, the coaches do a test. He'd always do his test. He'd have 100 on his test. He'd always fill it out exactly right. He's always taking notes. He's always doing the right thing. He's the first guy to come in the building and say, hey, Coach, there's a kid at Mott Children's Hospital that wants to come to practice. Can he come? I'll be like, yeah, don't ever ask me that again. Just bring him. He's selfless, a phenomenal teammate. Orgy threw the touchdown, and he's running toward the end zone to celebrate. So he's the ultimate team guy and guy you want as your quarterback.
Sharon was asked if his offensive line can clean up some of its mistakes in just 1 week.
Yeah, never where you want it to be. And I think it's probably, you know, it's definitely got to get better. But I thought the attitude, I thought the strain was there. The details and the technique have to continue to get better. And that's a product of your first game as an offensive line. And even the first years, last year, the year before that, I'd say the exact same thing. I went back and watched the past 3 years in first games and watched the second games, and it looks like 2 different lines. So I expect those guys to be a lot better. I know Coach Newsom will coach them really hard this week.
He also has no worries when it comes to Donovan Edwards and another slow start.
Yeah, I think Donovan had 11, Kalal had 15, and if Donovan doesn't get one of them called back, you know, he's got more yardage. So all those things they'll happen for him. He's a confident kid. And we know he's a really good player, and he showed up in big moments for us, so not worried about his confidence.
My guest today says this is a huge early season test for Michigan and might not be a good barometer of the team they will be by mid or late season. Up next is the angel of the big house, beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. So stay with us. Joining us today on our game day show as we talk Texas, not Ohio State, so we're a little early this year. I think we've talked earlier in the last few seasons too, but beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News. Hi, Angelique.
Well, Mike, I kind of now feel like you saved me for the big game. Maybe
Well,
that's
all
it.
the big games if I had my way, but yeah, happy to have you on to talk about what is a really big game. Wanted to backtrack before we get to Texas. Get your thoughts on the opener, Fresno State last weekend, some of your observations. You know, a lot of fans that I hear from at least seem to be alarmed at the play of Davis Warren, but I thought he carried himself really well for a first-time appearance. How about you?
I thought so too. I mean, I know there's hand wringing after that game, and I'm not sure it should be about Davis's performance.
No.
And let's be clear. I mean, the offensive line has some issues, so he's playing behind an offensive line that's not quite clicking yet, and a running game that's trying to figure itself out. Khalil, Donovan. Perhaps in the future we see a Ben Hall, whatever. So there's a lot of pieces in motion here, a lot of pieces that aren't cohesive yet. But I thought he stood out as someone who had it all together, and I mean that in so many ways. I mean, talk about a guy who has it all together. I mean, Davis Warren. Everyone knows his story. What an impressive young man, and I think that you're going to see the guy take strides going forward.
Yeah, I think so too. And as you said, it wasn't Davis Warren that we all know quarterback is the focus, and you need great play at quarterback to be a very good team. But he was the least of our worries, I think, Saturday night. Yeah, the offensive line. When you talk about that, or if we can talk about that for a minute, I was watching Ballas and Skeen the other day, getting Doug Skeen's breakdown and listening to John Jansen. I think what they have to say is very important. They really break it down well, and they're not worried. Because, as they said, everything that they saw during the game and then on film, several times on film, were just mental mistakes and just not having played together long enough. And they think it can be cleaned up. Maybe not this week, but it can be cleaned up.
They can clean this up, and they do really need to try to clean up a lot for this game against Texas. But, yeah, I mean, it's 5 new guys working together. And that's why I was talking to Josh Freed. We had a chance to talk to him Tuesday night after practice. And it is the one position where you have 5 people who have to work together in unison to make it work. And that's complicated, and it's complicated to get chemistry going. And yes, they've had a camp together, but there was also competition at a couple spots, center and right tackle. So you're getting used to 2 different guys. Who's going to be the guy? And, it's a work in progress. I think that's the safest way to describe it. And, I think you've got a new coach in Grant Newsom who's figuring out how to coach the position as well. I mean, coaching tight ends, late offensive line. There's a lot of new there. And I don't think people want to wait, but I think you're going to have to and wait for this to finally gel, because certainly the potential is there when you've got some very good pieces in Preeb, who is a captain and a longtime starter at Northwestern, and you got a Gio El-Hadi who's been waiting his turn and has a couple starts under his belt. So work in progress, and you're right. You trust guys who played the position like Jansen and Skeen and their assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know it's going to get better this week. We'll just see how much. On all phases of the offense, there are maybe some other things to be concerned about. I know I've been hearing from a lot of our listeners about Donovan Edwards. I mean, he had 11 carries, did not get a lot of help from the offensive line on many of those. But I'd say right now, Kalel Mullings, he really needs to be that number one guy. He seems or is a guy who can make some yards on his own when the line is not firing on all cylinders.
Absolutely. I mean, and this should not be a knock on Donovan Edwards, that he's not the quote-unquote number one guy, the lead back. He's not designed that way. He's not physically designed that way. To me, he's sort of the change-up guy who can make so much happen. I would use him a little bit more as a receiver out of the backfield, too. And I go back to that Maryland game, was it 2021, that season? I always think, why aren't you seeing more of that? And I think that is definitely the way to utilize Donovan. And, you're right. There were times that he wasn't getting any help. And but Kalel is a guy who first of all, I just really like the guy. I mean, he's really smart and he's just so enjoyable to talk to. And I remember talking to him at the Fiesta Bowl when he was really making that transition. He was still practicing a little bit of linebacker and running back. It was the big media day, and they had everybody in position groups set up that way. And I was walking with him, and I said, "Well, which way do you want to go? Like, where are you going to sit for your interviews? What's your preference?" And he just nodded toward the running back. So this is a guy who wants to play the position, and he's got that defense mindset because he played linebacker, and he sees the field well. And back to the hand wringing. I know there is a lot because there are expectations for Donovan. He's on the cover of the EA Sports game, all these things, and I think he understands what his role is going to be, and it's going to be an important one, Mike. It's just, I think as you said, you're going to see Kalel be the thunder. Like Donovan said in the spring, he reminds him of Hassan Haskins, and he's the guy who's going to get those Blake Corum yards for you, and I don't think the expectation was ever that Donovan would be that guy.
No, and I think what we saw from Donovan last week was more a product of the game plan for Fresno State than anything else, because as we know, he's going to be used in a variety of ways moving forward, which we didn't necessarily need to see last week against Fresno State because we didn't want Texas to see that. But I'm not worried about Donovan either, so we'll see what happens this week. But, I mean, it was a clunky performance. And we've seen those even in the last 3 years in some of the earlier games. Bowling Green last year. I mean, you get that early in the season, but we didn't have to clean it up in the first 3 games, the non-conference games, where we've had to clean up mistakes and get ready for a number 3 team. The fact of the matter is, the reality, we really do have to clean up a lot this week.
Boy, I really like that description you used, clunky. I got to save that, next time if they have a game like that. That's a really perfect description. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of exciting in so many ways that this non-conference schedule is set up this way, with Texas coming to town, 2 CFP teams from last year, the national champion, the national semifinalist, and we haven't seen that in Ann Arbor in a little while. So it's very pleasing in that sense to get the big game with game day and Fox big noon kickoff, all of that. But it's going to be a big test for this Michigan offense. I think, in particular, I think we all know what the defense can do. But I think if there's any hand wringing to be done, besides worrying about how quickly the offensive line is going to gel, it's the receivers, and I thought that all going into the season. I think you've got Samaj Morgan, and then I'm just not sure. And I think that you can rely on Colton Loveland, but defenses are going to do what Fresno State did, and they are going to double him. They're going to make sure he's covered, and then you've really got to show your hand. Like, who do you have catching the ball? And so I think that's the area that I want to see how this team develops, and I think they're going to have that opportunity, because I suspect that Texas is going to load the box and challenge Davis to throw, and he's going to have to find some of these guys, and they have to make catches. There were a lot of those guys were targeted, and the job wasn't done well.
Peyton O'Leary dropped one right in his hands, which and he's supposed to be a sure-handed guy. And Tyler Morris quit running on a route that was a beautifully thrown ball. So there is hope in that passing game. So I'm not worried yet. I'm not worried about the defense. I know we all thought before the season started that the defense was going to carry the team. Did you see anything on Saturday night that would indicate that won't be the case?
No, I mean, I know that, again, conversation about Will Johnson. Oh, he got beat a couple times. Well, talking to Derek Moore last night, or Tuesday night, he was talking about how he went back and looked at Will's pick six, and he said that was the angriest pick six I've ever seen. It's just, Will Johnson is elite, and he knows that he wasn't elite a couple times, and he made it change, and he made it happen. And no, I mean, I think that this defense is as advertised, and I think we'll learn more about Wink Martindale on Saturday too, and the game he calls, and because they're going to have some interesting matchups. I mean, Texas lost a bunch of really elite receivers, but they added some really good receivers.
Oh yes, they did.
And I think that this team, we know that Michigan stops the run, or slows it at least. Definitely stopped it last week, but Texas lost their lead back and their third, fourth string back. So I think they're going to have a tough time running. But I'll be interested to see how the pass defense goes on Saturday.
Well, the often overlooked special teams, I thought, were surprisingly good. Punt and kick returns very solid. Tommy Doman, you just get used to him just booming punts, and he did the few times he had to punt. But oh my, do we have a legged place kicker again? Dominic Zavada. Man, he looks like the real deal, doesn't he?
Yeah. See, you said what I kept adding an A when I was typing his name. I'm like, no, Zavada. I think I want to add that Zavada. But yeah, I mean, what a terrific leg, and he looks completely. It kind of reminded me of Jake Moody just going out there looking unfazed, and I guess most kickers are like that. You don't see them going out there looking nervous, but he just looks like he has just tremendous confidence to match his tremendous leg, and what a terrific pickup in the portal for Michigan, and yeah, I mean, and Khalil Mullings, I mean, you're the guy who wants to do that and return kicks and loves it. And every time I see guys return kicks, I'm like, I said to Wojo on Saturday, I'm like, that is the last job I would want to do, and it's a dangerous job, and you've got guys who want to do it, and they did do it well. So that was definitely a huge plus, and because I really didn't know what to expect from Zavada, and he's got the leg. He says he can. When someone asked his range, and he's like under his breath saying 60, 70, and I'm like,
wow.
Oh, okay. So we'll see about that, but that was definitely a pleasant.
It's a nice weapon to have when you're waiting for your offense to develop, to have that in your back pocket as a drive saver. And we have some games coming up where I think we'll see his right leg out there a bit, probably this Saturday. But let's talk about this big marquee matchup, first ever regular season game between Texas and Michigan. And I see Quinn Ewers has taken to referring to that team up north this week. And, I wonder where he learned that, but that's what we've been hearing. But how Michigan deals with him is going to be very, very key on Saturday, isn't it, Angelique?
It is. And that's what, talking to Derek Moore Tuesday, they're relishing this. These guys, they really, the pass rush is going to be critical for Michigan, and trying to get this guy, and maybe they don't get to him, maybe they don't drag him down for a bunch of sacks, but if they can rattle him, that's going to go a long way for this being a positive outcome for Michigan. And to me, that's where this game is really, that's where it is, because if he has time and can find those receivers. Yes, Will Johnson's back there, but there are going to be some. It would be a big day, I think, for Texas. So I don't. This front seven is so good, and you got Jason Barham, what he was able to do. Maybe he didn't get the big numbers, but he certainly is extremely physical, and I suspect they'll utilize him a little bit more and differently on Saturday. But these guys are really looking forward to it, and the whole measuring stick cliche is very much what they want. They want to what what Derek said is they want to show everybody that they haven't lost a step.
Well, we all know that, the secondary is going to be tested. They reloaded at the wide receiver spots with Ryan Wingo. He's a redshirt freshman. Matthew Golden, I think, came over from Houston. Isaiah Bond, hey, we just saw him last year for Alabama. Right. So two of their receivers are in the NFL from last year's team, and these three guys who Sharon said are really, really fast. They'll test the secondary, but I think if Texas has any question mark, it's going to be the running game. The offensive line's really good, but on Saturday they used two backs. Their number one guy, C.J. Baxter, is out for the season. Another one of the young guys is out for the season. But they need to run the ball some to win this game, don't they?
They do. And I was talking to a couple coaches that, I chit-chat with, and they're not in Michigan, and they're like, well, I could see Texas airing it out and going that route. And I said, well, you have to have some semblance of a run game. And I think that if they do have a semblance of it, I mean, I got to believe that Texas has enough talent that they can muster some yards in the run game and give Quinn Ewers a little bit of break and a little bit of time to do what he does best. But I think it's going to be. I mean, that's the strength of Michigan's defense, and I think that it is going to be a problem for Texas. Do I think it'll be debilitating? No, but it'll take away some of what they want to do.
Well, I thought Steve Sarkisian at his presser on Monday made an interesting observation I think Michigan fans should pay attention to. He said they like to run Texas 85 to 90 offensive snaps per game, while Michigan is consistently in the 60 to 65 snap area. And he said that's where the battle is. It's a battle for tempo and which team controls that. And I think he was dead on, and he knows that. He also said Michigan's play snap count is closer to what an NFL game looks like, which I thought was interesting because so many people, even our fans, think we run a caveman offense and not fast enough, not enough plays, but it really is more like an NFL offense. I think he is dead on. It is a battle for tempo there. If it's a fast game, in Texas's favor. If we slow it down, milk yards, keep the ball, keep the score lower, it's a Michigan game.
Yeah, no, I thought that was really interesting what he said too, and he is spot on with that. And I mean, if anybody complains about Michigan's tempo, I mean, I got a national championship partly from an offense and the way that Harbaugh designed it, and I mean, that's what I like to watch, and I know people want to see more flash sometimes, but this is pretty effective and effective enough that got Michigan where they were the last 3 years. So, but that's going to be a very important part. And I actually couldn't figure out the tempo on Saturday. And again, I just chalked that up to a first game because it just felt like, I don't know, neither team was really in any sort of rhythm. And it was just, I don't know, just sort of clunky, as you said. But this game's going to be different. And that's going to be very important. And that's why, defense, I mean, everyone can say, oh, Michigan's the new Iowa because they often, no, it's not that. But look what Iowa did last year. Yeah. I mean, their defense did so, I mean, it was vital for their success. And that's going to be the case here. And I think this defense can be problematic for any type of offense. And if they can kind of take away that pace that they like to run, that is going to be a huge factor for Michigan if it's going to pull out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose this week, well, I don't suppose, I know we're going to find out a lot more about this team, but I heard Kirk Herbstreit saying the other day, it's a big game. Everyone knows it's a big game, but Michigan needs to lean into its mentality, not abandon it. That's paraphrasing him a bit, but I think what he really means is, hey, look, it might not look pretty now, but the system works. Don't get away from it, not even against Texas, even though it's early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, it is their bread and butter. It's what Michigan does well. And, we talked about that. We haven't mentioned Alex Orji. And I just, I wonder if they use him more on Saturday and to give them that tough running look and threat and not that he, I'm not saying he's going to play a quarter or whatever, but use him more than versus sprinkling him in like they did last week. And because I think he is someone who Sarkisian also talked about, and they've played Jalen Milroe, and they know what that kind of body and quarterback is like. So, I think he could be a wild card in this game too in Michigan's offense. But going back to your point, Mike, I don't know how you argue with what Michigan's offense has been. And, maybe the parts were different, and you had guys like Blake Corum and obviously J.J. McCarthy. You're not going to plug and play right away, but blueprint's there, and I think it's a really good one to follow.
Yeah.
And you got guys like Max Bredesen in there and Colson Loveland. I mean, they're not going to go away from tight end, fullback. I like this kind of football.
Yeah, no, I like it too, and I think one of the interesting things about Michigan's offense and how they run it is I had Craig Way, Texas's radio play-by-play voice on earlier in the week, and he was saying, Texas's defensive coordinator says Michigan is the most problematic team to prepare for. What makes that problematic is everyone in the SEC and everyone who Texas plays wants to go, 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 and
yeah,
that means that you're practicing against that kind of offense also for, 10 of your games, maybe even 11, and you turn around and play Michigan and it's okay, we're going to milk the clock. The defensive coordinator for Texas said this is something Texas hasn't seen, but they won't see it again the rest of the year. They just won't. And he said you never know how your defense is going to react because they're used to that fast pace and they're saying, come on, man, snap the ball. Let's go. So, a lot of fans, especially younger fans who want that kind of football, don't realize what an advantage that the kind of offense Michigan runs and how it impacts the tempo of the game. And watch that Saturday. As we've said, that is the key.
Yeah. It goes back to your point about pace and they can lull. And they're not going to lull this defense to sleep. I'm not saying that, but it's going to lull them into this, like what you said. They expect to see what they see all the time in practice, and that is definitely tough. You've got to be more patient. You've got to be disciplined because that's when penalties start racking up. And I think it sort of reminds me of when Don Brown was here. They're talking about playing military academies and how long it takes them to prepare for them.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, Michigan's not running some newfangled offense or something that you don't normally see, but you're right in the sense that it is a pace they don't see and a grinding offense that they're not used to. And that's going to be critical is can this offensive line, Michigan's offensive line and the running game, can they replicate what we saw so much of last year? And I think back to the second half of the Penn State game. Is this offense capable of doing something like that? Maybe not yet, but if they can get half of that kind of production against this Texas defense, then yeah, I think that this is going to be a coin flip game.
Well, final question before we let you get away, Angelique. Coaches always say, we hear this every year, we see the most improvement between weeks 1 and 2, and I don't know that I always agree with that, but it seems to be pretty much a universal opinion in the coaching world. That said, even if Michigan does make the leap we expect, and I'm being realistic and saying I don't know that it's going to be enough of a leap at least this week, how do you see this in your gut shaking out on Saturday?
Yeah, I think I have concerns from Michigan's offense, and just in terms of the pass game, and can they get something going there that will help. They are going to. Davis Warren, and it's not questioning him. I just think that they are going to challenge him, and does the receivers are they going to come? Are they going to step up? And I do think that Michigan's defense, although I think the front seven is powerful and will be able to get in Quinn Ewers' space. The guy's he's a veteran, and everyone talks about J.J. McCarthy and how much that experience helped that team last year. Well, the same is true with Quinn Ewers, and I have tremendous respect for Will Johnson, and he's not the only one back there, and I think that Texas is going to be able to find its receivers and burn Michigan a couple times, and I think I sense that you're suggesting the Texas wins this game, and I do too. I just, the point spread, I think it went up, and I think people, saw that Michigan maybe wasn't quite there yet last week, and that factored in partly the point spread going up. But I do. I think that Michigan's front seven will pressure him, but I think that he's got that savviness that they'll make it work.
Well, we're going to find out a lot about that on Saturday, and can't wait. Here with us today has been beat writer Angelique Chengelis from the Detroit News, and we always have Angelique back for the game and look forward to that. But great to get you on early for a big game, Angelique. So we thank you for your time as always, and we'll have you back in November for our favorite weekend of the year.
That is so right. It is our favorite, and thank you for getting me into the early season rotation. I feel better now. I feel more complete.
On Quick Hits today, no injuries were mentioned this week, so it looks like we're in good shape for Saturday. Here are a few game day notes of interest. Texas won the only game in this series. It was a classic in the 2005 Rose Bowl that came down to a winning field goal by Dusty Mangum in a 38-37 win for the Longhorns. Head coach Steve Sarkisian is in his fourth year and has a record of 26-14, 71-49 overall in 11 years as a head coach. Last year, Texas was 12-2 overall, 8-1 in the Big 12. They ended their season in the Sugar Bowl playoff semifinal, losing a thriller to Washington 37-31. They finished the year ranked number 3 in the AP poll and number 4 in the coaches poll. They are ranked number 3 coming into this week's game. If the forecast holds up, it will be a picture-perfect day for football in the Big House. Partly cloudy skies and temps near 60. The chance of rain is 20%, and winds will gust up to 13 miles per hour. One thing is certain, we'll know more about this Team 145 after the matchup. Texas comes in with a very experienced team led by an NFL-bound quarterback. While we're breaking in a new quarterback and offensive line, it will be a challenge to say the least. But as we all know, that's why these young men come to Texas and Michigan to play in games just like this. Kickoff is scheduled for just after 12 noon and will be broadcast on Fox. Next week, we stay home for a first-time matchup with Arkansas State. On Tuesday's Visitors Edition, my guest will be the radio play-by-play voice of the Red Wolves, Matt Stoles. On Thursday's Michigan Game Day show, we'll be joined by Chris Ballas from the Wolverine magazine and the Wolverine on 3. So make sure you join us. That does it for now. Enjoy Saturday's huge game, and let's hope we see improvement on the offensive side of the ball. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Think victory, beat Texas. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue.
Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!